Class is in session. Almost. But first, congratulations, May, for being first. It is you who is first today. You did it. Congratulations. You are first to the class. So, today's stream is going to be quite different than what I usually do. This is a Subathon reward stream. You guys met the Subathon incentive to do a Japanese teaching stream for beginners. And setting this up took me a month. What you're about to see is about 3 weeks-ish of preparation. And bear in mind those 3 weeks were spent mostly after work. I'm already tired. Maybe a day on a weekend, just adding things here and there. Does it look like a month of preparation? Not really. But we're gonna touch into pacing and all that fun stuff as we get into it. So, for those observant in the chat, you may have noticed that I pinned the PowerPoint presentation that I'm using in the pinned comment, and if you, for some reason, can't see it, I even have a chat bot set up. If you type !PowerPoint, !slideshow, !PPT, it'll pull up the link for you as well. So if you ever want to visit a slide we've already covered for reference or follow along, or skip ahead if you really freaking want to, go ahead. Powerball? No! That's not... In any case, with plenty of further ado, I don't know how long this stream is going to be, actually. Fun fact, well, not fun fact, when I had initially started making this PowerPoint presentation for the stream, it was about twice as long as what you're about to see. And I realized earlier this week, that is way too long. So I cut it back quite a bit. I aim to make this digestible for everybody. Or nobody. I don't know my audience. It's fine, don't worry about it. In any case, minasan, boku no Nihongo o oshiete miru haishin ni youkoso. Let's get started, shall we? But first, a disclaimer. I'm not a Japanese teacher. I failed the JLPT N4 by 1 question, and that was 2 years ago. I am completely self-taught. I'll get into that later. And anything I say can and will be used against me. But also, I did my best to fact check whatever I'm about to say. But if I'm wrong, it's okay. Just point and laugh and call me wrong. That's what you do nowadays. With that out of the way, just know that the best teacher is probably somebody who actually has received proper study and training instead of some guy that literally taught himself. In any case, what you can expect from today is just exposure to learning Japanese. If you came here to learn Japanese and get fluent, you came to the wrong place. You're not going to get fluent in a day. Teacher, I can hardly read. Well, it's a good thing I can speak. So, I didn't want to make the scope of this stream too big, I wanted to keep this very beginner-friendly and accessible. And unfortunately, a drawback of that is if you expected to learn a lot of Japanese grammar today, we're only covering the basics. The very, very, very fundamental basics. The introduction. This would be considered just dipping your toes in the water before you take your first steps in the water before you start swimming. Like, this is a preliminary course. This is to expose you to what learning Japanese is like for the most part. The way I see it, there are many, 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 countless Japanese learning resources on the internet. And you're doxing us? Yes. So many learning resources on the internet that simply doing what they do, I didn't feel would be a very efficient use of anyone's time, really. What I'd like to do, instead, is focus more on what it's like to learn Japanese and good, healthy mindsets to make the most efficient use of your time and avoiding burnout. But don't worry, we will be learning Japanese in this stream. It's not fake, it's not false advertising. I'm hoping by the end of the stream, assuming you stick for the whole thing, you'll be able to form a very, 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 very basic sentence. Maybe even just understand a word. Learn a kana. Just something, anything. That's called progress, and you should be proud of progress. What I will be doing is also recommending resources that I've used myself. I am fully aware that there are many resources that exist that I will not be recommending simply because I can't speak for them. I've never used those resources, and I'll touch upon them when we get there. But expect mostly an introduction. Yes, Japanese learning for beginners. When you're beginning, you're being introduced. I plan on introducing the subject in what I would hope is a healthy way, and a healthy, accessible way. And if I fail at that, then just turn the stream off, I guess. So, introduction. You want to learn Japanese, huh? Well, learning any language is, you're in it for the long haul. There's no sugarcoating this. Learning Japanese is, it's a mountain to climb. It is huge. It's a full, complex language, and there's no easy way around it. It requires persistence, dedication, and commitment. And not everybody's ready for that, and that's okay. The key is to just, in my opinion, try it. And if you don't like it, you don't feel like committing, you don't have to. You could say you tried it, and it's like, yeah, you tried it, it wasn't for me. Welcome in, Opie. You can't hear you, but you're stopping by to say hi while I'm at ACN. Your cosplay is doing a lot of psychic damage. You need to show me your cosplay. I can't believe this. It's fine. Have fun at ACEN. And maybe you could catch the VOD, learn some Japanese, or hit me up in the Discord or DMs if you are feeling bold. I don't know. I keep telling people they can DM me if they want, but I'm too shy to DM people, so I guess I should follow my own. They can't hear me right now? I have subtitles! But it's fine. Listen, they can't hear me right now. However, if they watch the VOD, they will hear this. But enough stalling. Back to language learning. So, language learning, if anyone, for example, a lot of students in high school, for example, they try learning a different language. There are alternate language courses in high school. And fun fact, I actually learned Spanish back in high school. I took the full 4-year curriculum. So learning another language is familiar, in a sense. I will say, for English speakers, it's a lot easier to learn Spanish than it is to learn Japanese. This is simply because Spanish has a lot of similarities to English, whereas Japanese has almost no similarities to English. The similarities are that there are nouns, there are verbs, there are adjectives, there is a sentence structure, and rules to be followed and many exceptions to those rules, and the similarities end there. It has been said that the difficulty of a language to learn is directly proportional to how fundamentally different that language is to your native language. And unfortunately, Japanese and English are fundamentally different, almost to the core. So you're pretty much gonna be having to start from square one. But there is good news. Because you presumably know how to speak English, or whatever your native language is, that knowledge of grammatical structure and how sentences are formed, etc., you could use your existing knowledge of words and how words are used to convey information, how nouns, verbs, and adjectives, the differences, how they are, what conjugation is like for context purposes. That conceptual knowledge can transfer and help cement the new rules that are applied when learning a new language. So when learning a new language, well, when doing any ambition, really, you gotta have a goal. When I was a wee little kid, when the elementary school teacher was like, you should set goals for yourself, I'm like, no, that's dumb. I don't need to set goals. This is simply because, for better or for worse, I was the gifted kid that just understood everything first try. For better or for worse, that is not the case with Japanese. Holy shit. I can safely say, Japanese is not a pick up, understand at first try it language. It is absolutely not. Holy moly. It takes practice and dedication, which is why I'm now appreciating setting reasonable goals for yourself. While yes, it's okay to have an end goal, don't make that your primary fueling goal. That's the equivalent of trying to start a car and drive it from idle in Top Gear. Not to be confused with the show. You gotta take steps. Baby steps, as they say. Set reasonable goals for yourself, and you will eventually achieve that end goal. Another good example is Breath of the Wild. The game starts you out. Kill Ganon. Great. I literally just woke up and all I had was 3 hearts and a stick. And they want me to kill Ganon. I mean, I can. Or I could go to this village over here first and build my way up. And then 200 hours later, after traversing the land, I can finally kill Ganon. Easy first try, watashi wa nihongo. That's actually technically incorrect, so good job. You proved the point. Excellent. A controversial take of learning language, Japanese in particular, that I found online circulating around, is that you need to have a good reason to learn Japanese. And what my friends and I say to that is that any reason is a good reason. Any reason at all. No matter what the reason is. That's a good enough reason. You know I don't know shit. Well, you're gonna know shit after this stream, probably, hopefully, definitely, maybe. The key to staying motivated is to let your passion take over, but don't let it burn you out. Let your ambition drive your daily progress, but be patient with yourself. Just 1 step at a time, 2 steps if you're bold, 3 steps if you're really going at it. I wouldn't suggest more than 3. You might break your legs at that point. But another key is to, again, steady commitment. Just daily practice. Don't skip a day. The way it was taught to me, and I can corroborate this, habits are hard to form and easy to break. And when I say habits in this case, I mean commitment habits of self-improvement or dedication to a craft. Once you habitualize learning something, you just gotta keep it going. And I can appreciate that there will be days where you're just drop dead exhausted. Bleh. You don't want to at all. On those days, force yourself to just do
Dash,
one
there was
thing.
a time that I had a flat tire and called my grandpa.
And that is call your grandpa. Okay.
Not because I needed help, but because it felt good talking with someone else that had experienced retiring.
God damn it, Core. I'm trying to give life advice here. I swear to God, he wasn't kidding about the metal pipes. That is the second metal pipe. You are not first with the metal pipe. Opie was in here earlier with the metal pipe. But she's at ACEM. I can't believe you've done this. I can't believe you've done this. I really hope I'm going to be able to do my stream in a cacophony of metal pipes. In any case, the key, touching on what I said earlier, you really don't want to break the habit. And on those days where you just don't have the energy and you're exhausted, zero motivation, and you just can't do Japanese at all, do one thing. Just one. That's it. What that's gonna do is it's gonna cement the habit in your mind. It's almost subconscious. It doesn't matter if you just write konnichiwa in hiragana. That's fine. That is your one thing of the day. You can pick it up next day. The trick is when you're trying to move a heavy object, don't stop moving that object, because if you do, it's going to make it harder to move it again. I'm sure many of us can relate to how many half-finished Steam games do you have in your backlog that you just put down and you're like, I'll just finish it later, and then it just slips away and you never play it again. I know I'm guilty of a couple. The same concept applies to learning Japanese or any ambition, really. Steady commitment is key. Keep the progress going, even if it's like half of a baby step. That's fine. This is advice with me is fitness. Even if you can't ring fit, you do something for fitness. He gets it. Core gets it. He can attest to this. But something you just have to appreciate when you're learning Japanese. It's steady progress. That's it. It doesn't matter how fast or slow you go. Keep it steady. 1 mile an hour is still progress. 0 miles an hour is not progress. That's it. You don't have to be sprinting all the time. Take it at your own pace. And now's a good time to talk about my own pace. Welcome in, headpats. You're about to hear a monologue. So, before we get into learning Japanese, I think it would be helpful to at least give a base point on how I learned Japanese, because to start, I never took any Japanese courses at all. Progress is progress. It doesn't matter how fast you take it, just as long as you do not stop. Correct. This is not to be confused with those fucking shitheads of internet influencers that tell you to grind 24/7. No, don't grind 24/7. You will burn yourself out faster than a freaking candle by burning a thermite candle. Don't burn a thermite candle. It'll ignite more than you'd like. The key to not stopping? Slow down. Slow down to a snail's pace if you have to. It's okay to slow down. I will say that again louder for those in the back if I have to. Take it at your own pace. There is nobody telling you you have to learn Japanese fast. There's no one telling you you have to clear your goals fast. Take your time. My Japanese learning journey. As you can see, what we have here on screen is my Oshi. But the story does not start with my Oshi. She just gives me some motivation. The story actually starts at about 2010. That is when I started getting into anime. And when I say anime, I mean subtitled anime with Japanese dub. I did watch anime on Toonami back in the early 2000s, but I did not realize it was Japanese anime back then. I thought it was, ooh, cool show, awesome, it's on TV with English, so awesome, I like this. It was much later that I learned, oh, that's anime, cool. However, for the longest time, since 2010, in fact, 2010 all the way to friggin' 2020, I completely wrote off any semblance of learning Japanese, because in my mind, I thought it was impossible. I was convinced Japanese is too hard to learn, and it's not worth learning. And I held that belief for 10 years. Look at me now. It's worth noting that I stopped watching anime in 2016. Some people say that learning Japanese to watch anime isn't a good enough reason. I disagree. However, I can't relate. Watching anime in Japanese was never one of my motivational factors. What was one of my motivational factors, however, was in 2020, early 2020, it was around March time, the YouTube algorithm threw me a Watame no Uta video. And out of curiosity, I decided to click it. And the early Watame no Uta videos, how they were structured was she would sing 2 songs, and then she'd do a Japanese gag, like a joke, and then she'd do a little commentary before ending the show and passing it off to Kiryu Koko, who would then go live with Asakoko Raibu. My reasoning is I want to read manga without having to wait on translators. Yes, that is a fantastic reason. But with Asakoko and my discovering the holographic olive, I couldn't understand Japanese. But I really, really liked the show. It appealed to me. And coincidentally, around that same time, I have a friend, let's call him Angel, because he descended from the heavens, and nonchalantly just said, hey, want to learn Japanese? And I'm like, sure. It went a lot more like that. The actual story behind that was, this friend of mine has expanded my world quite a lot. I recall he taught himself Japanese back in about 2013 and has been learning it since, so I knew he knew Japanese. He introduced the offer as a way of saying, hey, you want to try learning Japanese? You could just give it a shot, and if you don't like it, or if you think it's too much, you can quit at any time. No harm, no foul. He has another friend who has tried learning Japanese on 4 different occasions, and each time it didn't quite work. Given my affinity to help people that I'm working with, he thought it would be a great idea to bring me along learning Japanese, and as a study buddy, have us learn the kana together. And I took him up on the offer. And what I did not realize at the time was that was a giant timeline split. There is a branch of timelines where I took him up on the offer, and an even darker branch of timelines where I said no thanks, and if I said no thanks, I probably wouldn't even be streaming right now. So that is what caused the chain reaction. I made the arbitrary decision to simply give it a shot. Why not? I'm gonna give it the old college try. And I did. Him and I, and the friend, we spent a month learning the kana, hiragana and katakana. I will explain what those are later. It was a really easy, slow-paced, but dedicated way of learning Japanese daily. And while it was easy-paced, he would not let us slack. He would take time out of his day to send each of us 3 screenshots from his untranslated visual novel collection, because he is a visual novel enthusiast. And he would ask us, he'd give us a kana chart, and say, romanize the kana, if there's a kanji, just leave it blank. And that was good exercise, and exposure to the language, to get us started. And as the exercises progressed, he would encourage us to try not using the kana chart, and see how much we could do without the kana chart. And it was up to us to take our own training wheels off, and it was fantastic. Letting us learn at our own pace like that, while still having a minimum pace to keep up with, which was those 3 screenshots. After a month, he released us to go our own way in learning Japanese. What I ended up doing, I bought a kanji book, which I will be talking about later. He went and got a freaking $200 Rosetta Stone program. And we went our own separate ways after that. I spent the next 6 months hardcore binging that kanji book. He did the Rosetta Stone program for about 3 weeks before fizzling out and completely crashing out, and he stopped. Which is sad. Honestly, it's unfortunate that happened. I can't blame him for doing that, simply because if somebody does not want to keep up the motivation and do something, they don't have to. They have the right to quit. I can respect that. I chose not to quit. I stuck my head in the game. I took that kanji book, and I spent a good 7 months learning Japanese without even knowing how to form a sentence. Moist Roadkill, welcome in. You can make a stream for what? Welcome in! This is certainly one of the streams to come into. Welcome in, man. Welcome in. Is my chat not showing on stream? Oh, there it is. Oh, hey, Meeker. That's Meeker. Welcome in. Welcome in. Didn't recognize y'all. Y'all got different names. What the hell? Well, yeah, the first 7 months of my journey, I didn't even know how to form a sentence. I would then, after completing the kanji book, I was lost. I was like, well, I learned the kana. I learned the kanji. Where do I go from here? My friend who taught me the kana it's not that he didn't help me. It's that he encouraged me to find my own path. Hey, Shiny, welcome in. I'm storytelling. Don't worry, we will get into the Japanese later. I'm setting context. Where was I? Right. He wanted me to carve my own path, and in searching for Japanese resources, I stumbled upon Taya Kim's Guide to Japanese. And that is what I used. And unfortunately for me, I ended up burning myself out 80% through it, which sucks because the last 20% had some very, very useful, moderately advanced, but very useful grammatical concepts that I need to know and am encountering in my games that I'm playing. And it's like, well, it's good that I'm encountering them and I'm forced to learn them. But the motivation at this point is very difficult to maintain, especially with my work schedule, stream schedule, my stream schedule especially. Like, the reason I started learning Japanese was to get my ass back into learning Japanese. I noticed that I had completely fallen off, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna let myself, I have come too far to let it all slip away like all my Spanish skills slipped away. No. I'm gonna try streaming in Japanese, and here I am. By the way, today's tea, lemon ginger. And I'm gonna make some more lemon ginger, because I'm gonna be talking a lot. But that is my Japanese learning journey. 5 years in the making. Well, more than that actually, technically. It's like 15. Worth noting, I did not spend all of the last 5 years dedicated study. If I had to guess, I'd say only about 2 to 2.5 years of the last 5 years were me actually committed to studying Japanese. Everything else was like off and on. That's how hard I fell off. But also, I'm happy I got back into it. I think that's enough for my Japanese learning journey. We can continue. Hopefully that gave some context on what it's like for someone who has never taken a Japanese course to teach themselves a freaking language. So, I touched upon the resources that I used earlier, and how I used it. While learning the kana with my friend, instead of relying on the kana charts, I also bought myself some flashcards from Amazon. You don't need to buy yourself flashcards. You can just tear up some scraps of paper or just get some 3x5 cards and make your own. I actually suggest making your own because handwriting each kana, pretty fun, not gonna lie, the first time handwriting the kana. It's like an art project almost. And because you made them, it just feels better. The flashcards I bought were like $50 for the whole set, but these were cream of the crop, premium grade flashcards. They were laminated, high quality. The other side had a bunch of information on each kana, like the freaking original kanji that it was derived from, example words and all that stuff that I didn't even use. I have since given away these flashcards to my friend's daughter who's interested in learning in Japanese. Hey, Meeker, thanks for the follow. If you're interested in the flashcards that I used, hit me up on the Discord. I can dig up my Amazon purchase history and get them for you. I only don't recommend them simply because you do not need to spend $50 on flashcards. You don't need to. Get cheap-ass flashcards. Don't let me catch you spending $50 on flashcards, you hear me? Get the cheap-ass flashcards. They will do you wonders. Go to Office Depot or something, get like a $5 pack of 3x5 cards and a pen, and you're set. It'll do you better, trust me. The book I referenced for learning kanji is shown on the screen here. Remembering the Kanji, Remembering the Kanji 1. A complete course on how not to forget the meaning and writing of Japanese characters, 6th edition, updated to include the 196 kanji approved for 2010 for general use by the Japanese government, by James W. Heisig. This book is about $30 on Amazon. I'm not sure if it was $30 back in 2020. It might be a little more expensive now. I strongly recommend a physical copy of this book. The way this book handles kanji is a very physical memory approach. You're gonna need a notepad and pen. And that's it, and the book. There are samples of this book online, but I personally feel having a digital copy of the book is doing yourself a bit of a disservice in this instance. Writing it down helps you remember things better as well, so making your own has two benefits. This book goes into how that works and why. But yes, you are correct in that. This kanji book, Remembering the Kanji, it will teach you how to remember all 2,136 Joyo kanji. It will teach you their English meanings and how to remember them. It will not teach you any of their readings, but it will set a fantastic groundwork to build your Japanese learning from. Huge disclaimer, however, this book is not for everyone, I would say. There are some people that do not learn this way. I decided to go this way because it appealed to me. I wanted to learn it this way, and it has worked for me greatly. There are people that use dedicated Japanese help book that integrate the kanji along the way with the grammar. This is a fantastic way to go about it as well. Like baka being idiot or horse? Not quite. The book will show you the kanji for horse, the mnemonic devices to remember that kanji, and that's pretty much it. It's up to your mind to fill the gaps, and it's because your mind fills those gaps, the book trains you on ways that, I can't believe I'm about to say this out loud, ways that professional memorizers use to memorize things. And it takes advantage of the human psychology tricks that they've unlocked, the memory palace of sorts. And it takes that ability and it supercharges your brain in ways you didn't even realize were possible. And before you know it, you are familiarizing yourself with kanji. By the time you're done with the book, the kanji no longer look alien. While you may not recall every single meaning of every kanji, the kanji will at least have familiarity to you and will be much easier to parse, decipher, look up, etc. Professional memorizers couldn't be your calendar brain. Listen, you'd be surprised. You could give it a shot. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work, and you try something else. But this Remembering the Kanji book, I pretty much swear by it. It's my Bible. But I appreciate that this is not the do-all, end-all way of learning. There are many ways of learning kanji, and the most recommended way is to quite literally explore. Experiment. Find what works best for you. Find a way you enjoy and do that. That is the best way to learn. Oh, Lander, you got a fucking hula hoop. Well, I don't even know what that means. I can't hula hoop, by the way. If there's anything I cannot do in life, it's hula hoop. I have tried so many times that I just can't get it right. My body doesn't work like that. Moving past academics, you can use any native Japanese media as a learning resource. I do mean anything. We're talking about VTuber Twitter posts. We're talking manga. We're talking especially hentai manga. Hear me out. I am an avid believer that hentai manga, or hentai in general, but specifically hentai manga, is maybe one of the best beginner to intermediate Japanese learning resources in existence. Simply because hentai has very simple plot that you can easily follow with great visual aid to what they're saying. I'm being serious. I'm 100% serious, okay? Because you're likely looking up hentai that interests you, you already know you are going to enjoy the source material. The only thing about it is it's adult material, but we're all adults here. If you are not an adult, get the fuck out of my stream. Learning languages is hard, but the power of horny is stronger, unironically so. An added benefit to this, and I can personally attest to this, is that once you are at an ability to actually read hentai manga with little to no dictionary assistance, it's like a double dopamine mindfuck of your brain, because you get the pleasure of enjoying the hentai while the dopamine pleasure of knowing you can understand a second language and all that stuff. It's crazy. Be hard, think better. Oh god. Is the nut better knowing you learned? Yes, actually! It is! It unironically is! Speaking of dictionaries, I use jisho.org as my online dictionary. This is, if you ever hear me typing mid-game during one of my Japanese game streams, I'm typing the word into jisho.org for a definition. I strongly recommend jisho.org as a good resource. The issue that some people have with jisho.org is, for example, Tae Kim. I used his guide on complete grammar, but Tae Kim rebukes jisho.org, among other English resources for Japanese, simply because English resources for Japanese words aren't comprehensive and native to the English language. What Tae Kim proposes is that you use a Japanese dictionary for Japanese words instead. And it makes sense if you already know Japanese. A very common criticism of that belief, while decent on paper, is that if you look up a word in a Japanese dictionary in Japanese, the definition will be in Japanese. Great! You need to be able to understand that Japanese definition in order to understand the word you were looking up. And if you don't already understand what you're going for, you're gonna keep looking up things. It's an endless cycle. Literally a catch-22. Thank you, Shiny. So that is why I'm okay with using jisho.org. If you just need to understand a word, look it up on Jisho. If you're looking up a word that you see from a media, Jisho will give you the list of contexts that apply to it. Be careful, however, because if you're constructing sentences yourself and you want to use a word, it can be very difficult to find the correct word to use based on the grammatical nuances involved. That will become more clear the more you're learning the language, but for beginners, don't worry about it. Just know that there are many English words that have multiple meanings, therefore multiple different kanji words equivalents, and unfortunately that can lead to a mistranslation. So you need to be wary of that. I could see going to a Japanese dictionary first and using that other resource as a fallback. That is a fantastic idea. Just don't lose yourself in all your resources. They always have a description in English, but not a word. You know? Sometimes it's just a word. Like, if you're just looking up a word, that's fine. But those are the recommended resources that I personally recommend. Some of you who are familiar with learning Japanese or have dabbled into it a little bit may have noticed I am lacking a lot of Japanese resources, and that is simply because I myself cannot attest to them as I have never used them. Common resources include self-help books or even educational books used alongside school classes, such as the Wanikani series or the Anki series of Japanese learning books. I've heard those are good, but I cannot speak for them if they are actually helpful to you. You will have to look into how they present the information to see if it is something you would like to try. I know the automatopoeias are really weird in English. Automatopoeias I am not covering in today's stream. Those are native Japanese, and they're on a case-by-case basis. I am constantly looking up automatopoeias, and it's very difficult because they just don't translate. This also explains, I get a first-hand exposure why non-native English speakers have trouble with English automatopoeias. Things that are obvious to us, like boom, bang, crackle. Those don't really work in other languages like we use them. Zuru zuru, yeah. But yeah, those are the resources I personally recommend. So now we're going to move on to the Japanese writing system. So, a lot of people may know that there are 3 writing systems in Japanese, and they are called hiragana, katakana, and kanji. It has been exposed to me by Meeker, who has joined us today, that the Japanese writing system is objectively bad, and he has freaking blackpilled on me that it is bad. And they need to standardize one, man. Make up your mind, Japan. Yeah, exactly. See, there he is. In any case, is his chats just not appearing on screen? What the hell? I'll have to look into that after stream. But yeah, I don't know why your chats aren't appearing on stream. They should. It might just be because it doesn't like your username. In any case, there are 3 writing systems, and they all intermingle with each other. Not the first time it's happened. Yeah, don't worry about it. I'm in the habit of reading chat out loud anyways. Followers only? He's followed, though. Anyone can chat. I'm all about freedom. Unless you're a bot. Be gone, bot! Unless you're one of my bots, in which welcome in, bot. So, the 3 writing systems are hiragana, katakana, and kanji. Hiragana is the native Japanese text. Pretty much, hiragana is used for pretty much everything. You can get by, for the most part, with hiragana only. But just know that if you are going to use anything above a child level comprehension, you're gonna need more than hiragana. But when you're just starting out, hiragana is just fine. Katakana is special. It's like hiragana, but only used in special cases. Most primarily for loan words. You're gonna hear a lot of English sounding words in Japanese. That's because they are English words. They use katakana for those words. They also use them to emphasize words in text. And they're just a very special use case words. Kanji are actually Chinese, and I'll explain the kanji later, but kanji is primarily for the nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And these 3 writing systems, they all intermingle with each other, and it flows like a coursing river with fish in it. I don't know what I'm talking about at this point. I'll get more into the writing systems later, but just know that there's 3 of them, and you don't need to learn all of them all at once. You can start with the hiragana. It's fine. I didn't try to learn katakana. You focused on the hiragana. Yeah, that's a good idea to start. I didn't start learning katakana until I was familiar with a lot of the hiragana. So, with the kana, the hiragana and katakana, they share phonetics. So, while they are 2 different writing systems, they are the same spoken system. It's not unlike capital and lowercase letters in English, where, yes, we have two of each letter, but they each sound the same. They're just used for different grammatical cases. It's similar in hiragana and katakana as you see here. So how you can distinguish them, it's difficult at first, but you get used to it really quick. Well, really quick, relatively speaking. Hiragana and katakana are different because how it was taught to me, hiragana are more curvy and artistic looking, whereas katakana are more straight line, postmodern, whatever the fuck that means. This is likely because hiragana and katakana came way later in the game than hiragana, in terms of how the language was developed. Hiragana and katakana are fine, just see them as mostly the same. They are, some of them, they're not always the same. For example, here, that I'm circling, some are the same, and it's great. There's a couple. Ri are very similar as well, so are ya. Notice how the hiragana is more curvy, but the katakana is more straight line. That's a simple rule of thumb. So starting with the hiragana, a hiragana chart like this one, you could, if you just type in hiragana chart in Google Images, you'll get something like this. There are so many hiragana charts. It almost doesn't matter which hiragana chart you use. You could use this one if you want, but a lot of people look at this chart and they get overwhelmed, which is understandable. This chart has a lot of information on it, holy moly. However, the trick is to only focus on the main hiragana, the ones that don't have any fancy schmancy stuff with them. There's only 46 of them. 46 is a lot, but I know you're capable of learning 46 because you've already learned a lot more than 46 different things in English, like letter combinations. Heck, capital and lowercase letters. 46 sounds familiar? Sure. An example I like to use when trying to downplay how overwhelming something can be is the Pokemon example. As somebody who played the original Pokemon Yellow on the Game Boy Color back in the day, I memorized all 150 Pokemon. It was great. I could look at a Pokemon, I knew its name, type, all that fancy schmancy stuff. That's 150 of them. That's more than their Arcana. And that was when I was like a kid, younger. And you can do it. It just takes practice. And here's the trick. If you just focus on the main 46, everything else simply stems from these 46. You're not memorizing 107 different things. You're memorizing 46 things and 2 use case rules that apply. Work smarter, not harder. If I could go on a tangent a little bit, pun intended, anybody who's taken a trigonometry course easily gets overwhelmed by how many things they feel like they have to memorize. If you can memorize the bare minimum and reconstruct the rest based on the fundamentals and how they work with each other, you'll be very pleasantly surprised to know just how much information you can cram into what you're going for. And let's give an example. The Dakuten down here, they add the ten or the little 2 dashes to the kana itself, and they voice the kana. So if we take ta, for example, right here, ta, when you add the 2 dots to it, da, it becomes da. Hey Talon, welcome in. We're learning kana. And it's kind of tricky to explain how voicing works, but how it was explained to me was, imagine how you would say the kana if your tongue was in a different spot of your mouth. Like if you say ta, try it with me, say ta, and then say da. Notice how your tongue is in a different spot in your mouth when you say it. That rule applies to all of the Dakuten. So when you see the two dashes next to any kana, try saying it with your tongue in a different spot, and it'll eventually come naturally. Another good example is ka. If you say ka, its Dakuten becomes ga. Ta, ga. If you try saying it out loud, you can feel the difference. Dentalized versus palatized. You cracked the code. Holy shit. Yes. Unironically, yes. That's it. That's actually it. Freaking, I learned something new today. Let's go. But that's how it works. Now, going to the combo hiragana, there is a name, a Japanese linguistic term for this. I don't know it. I never learned it because I never needed to know it. But what the combo hiragana do, they take one of the regular kana and they add one of the Y kana to it. When I say Y kana, I mean ya, you, or yo. And they just combine it with the first kana. And how that works, let's take ni and ya. So on the chart, we got ni and we got ya. And when we put them together, they get ni and ya. But when you combo them, the Y kana is written smaller, and you take the first sound of the first kana and end it with the Y kana. So ni ya becomes nya. You now know how to meow. Very useful. Gonna try something with TL bot? Lamau. Yo. It's fine. Thanks for playing with a translation bot. Very cool. If you are struggling with the combo hiragana, it is a struggle at first, because recognizing that the second kana is smaller takes some practice. However, a trick you can use to bypass this, if you say ni ya, nya, if you just say them really fast, it kind of merges into itself anyways in most cases. Thanks to the way the Y sound works. That's how language works, I guess. So if you want to take anything away from the stream, you now know how to say nya. Congratulations. Happy Catterday. And I can actually make that joke because it is Catterday. Hey, very rare Saturday stream from me. Onwards to the katakana. Katakana, everything I just said about hiragana applies to katakana. Literally everything. Same rules, same concepts. It's the same thing. They just look different. But for some stupid ass reason in my brain, it's actually harder. I don't know why. When I see katakana, my brain just goes full stop and it freezes and has to remember, oh yeah, I'm back to first grade mode. Picking apart each sound one by one. Yes, you need help. I've resolved to do my not ring fit exercises on rest days as well, but after doing the split squats, your legs are doing their imitation of jello. Do it with your arms instead. And if you can't do it with your arms, do it with your core. Sit-ups. Do some core workouts. Some scrunches. You got this. So if you've learned the hiragana, you can learn the katakana. You got this. The katakana are there, and you can conquer it. What a lot of people don't realize is that katakana are actually the true final boss of learning Japanese. Some people think kanji is the true final boss, but no, kanji is the final boss of Japanese. Katakana is that early game mid-boss side character that you fight, you defeat him, but then he's alive in the cutscene afterwards like, oh, I've been defeated. Okay, you guys are strong. Awesome. Cool. I'll just stick around periodically through your journey. I'm not necessarily a bad guy, but I'm just a recurring character. But then if you go through like a bunch of convoluted side quests and you do everything right, as you're heading to the final boss, there's like a hidden doorway. And if you go through that doorway, you see Katakana standing there menacingly. And he's all like, oh ho ho! So you've decided to challenge me once more! Well, let me show you my true power! And then it's fucking Sephiroth or some shit. I don't know. You assume loan words when you see katakana. That is a very safe assumption. That is not always the case, but most of the time it is. Just know that all of the complicated stuff with katakana doesn't necessarily come into play until you're intermediate to advanced level. So while yes, it could be intimidating, just know that you're not going to be facing the bonus extra super powerful boss early game. You're fine. When you're facing him early game, he's manageable. Like I said, early game mid-boss that then comes later as the super ultimate final boss. Slang, yes, it's used in slang. But yeah, that's katakana. There are a lot of things to know about katakana, but before we get into them, good ways to practice the kana. I'm going to refer to them as the kana. When I say the kana, I mean both katakana and hiragana. But a good way to practice kana, flashcards. Flashcards are perfect for the kana. That's how I learned them. That's how most people learned them. Initially, at least. And once you're familiar with the flashcards, this ties back to any Japanese media. If you follow any Japanese VTubers or any Japanese in general, you can see that they use kana a lot in their text. And you can just try to parse that as passive practice. Like you see a YouTube thumbnail or a YouTube video title that was recommended to you if you follow Japanese things like I do. Then you can look at it and be like, oh hey, let's try reading this. A really good source is Japanese media, anything, aimed at younger audiences, because they go very light on the kanji and heavy on the hiragana. Perfect for hiragana practice. They sometimes throw katakana in there as well. But there's a lot of manga samples. A lot of manga artists they give like maybe the first chapter as a sample. Go through those. If there's a manga you're looking at or you just want to see how it's like in Japanese, it's worth it. Especially if it's a shonen manga or something simple. That's a good one. Katakana grows relative to your own strength, pretty much. You gotta bounce, you gotta stay safe and have fun. Thanks for coming in. Chin-chan, wakannai. BRB, gonna make your jelly legs go get some dinner. Have fun with your dinner. After this slide, we're taking a Bezos break, so don't worry. Some of you may know that I do bi-weekly karaoke nights in the Discord. Fun fact, I actually tried Japanese karaoke 1 week after the month I learned the kana, to give myself a freaking crazy hardcore kana test. And honestly, karaoke is like Dark Souls on steroids in terms of learning the kana. You do not need to use karaoke when learning the kana. What karaoke will do is it will force you to immediately recognize and speed read kana out loud and force your brain to make those connections. And that's what it did for me. This is why I can read relatively quickly, but when I'm reading Japanese out loud on stream, my brain is processing at half the speed. I'm picking up bits and contextual pieces of what I'm reading and forming it together, almost assuming what I'm reading. And I get lucky and it makes sense nearly all the damn time. But I only recommend karaoke for when you really, really, really want to test yourself, or if you really want to try singing along to one of your favorite songs. It's a lot of fun. One hill I will gladly die on is that when you're learning kana, once you can get comfortable with a kana where you don't need the chart anymore, ditch the romaji entirely. James Heisig, in his Remembering the Kanji book, further emphasizes this. He dedicates an entire page as to why you should not be using romaji any more than you need to as a crutch to learn the kana. That is it. No more. Are you that king of that hill, though? I mean, I've actually gotten into several internet arguments in the past with people about this, and I genuinely believe when you are using romaji in your Japanese learning, all you're doing is polluting your mental space with English bias in a non-English language. Japanese is not English, and the sooner you can hardcore make that transition, the more it's gonna help you in the long run. The more you stick to romaji, the more it's gonna weigh you down, because you're still trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and I don't mean that fucking it goes in the square hole meme either. It's just gonna hinder you. Full stop. special notes about the kana that I didn't cover in the previous slides is that what I talked about earlier still applies when you're learning kana. Make no mistake, memorizing 46 kana is not easy at first. You need to give yourself plenty of time. It's in the fucking square hole, god damn it! Give yourself time. I gave myself a month. You do not need to give yourself a month. In college, they give you 10 days before you move on to stuff. Take it at your own pace and be patient with yourself. If anything, if I could scroll back, start with one row, and once you get familiar with that row, include the next row. Maybe focus on that row and then include both and build your way up. Building blocks, step by step. Don't do it all at once. You'll discourage yourself. Steady, easy. It'll come naturally over time. Trust me when I say, the more you practice Japanese, the kana will be as simple as breathing. I'll use myself as an example. You guys see how I read Japanese on stream, and while yes, I stumble quite often, it's almost second nature. Kind of. Do a little learning dance, step by step. Unironically, yes. Something worthy of note is the ha kana is almost always pronounced like wa. When y'all joke about watashi wa, you're actually using this wa here, and not the actual wa that is shown here. Something that's not in any kana chart is this horizontal line that you'll see quite a lot in speech, or written speech. What this does is it elongates the vowel sound that the kana uses. If I could use the English loanword table as an example, notice how the spelling of teburu uses the horizontal line for the extra e sound, teburu, instead of teburu. You will never see a double phonetic written like this unless it's a very special circumstance that calls for it. The little tsu trips up a lot of Japanese learners because it's technically not on the kana chart either. You see tsu right here, but you see tsu and you say it out loud. But if it's a small tsu, that is not the case. This is that vocal pause that you hear some speakers say when they're speaking in Japanese. An example would be the difference between date and datte. That is intentional, that little pause. Date, datte. That little tsu is in the middle. You can hear it in here. Dattara, like I've written it here. That's an example as well. And when people romanize it, they just take the preceding kana, the first letter of it, and just extend it. And that's how that works in Romaji. But like I said, this is only for Romaji interpretation. Throw that shit out the window once you don't need it. The G character. I've only seen this used 3 times. And I've been looking at Japanese media for 5 years. This is extremely rare. When I see it, it's usually as a furigana to a Japanese kanji compound that uses chi, and the rules for that compound mean it has to be voiced with this dakuten here, those 2 dashes. So you voice it as instead of chi, it becomes ji. If you don't get this one, it's not that big of a deal. But just know that this character is almost never used. And with that, we're gonna take our first Bezos break of the stream. We'll be back in 3 minutes with more tea, etc. Get up, stretch, grab a snack, and when we get back, we will start with kanji. Until then, I'll catch y'all in 3 minutes. Are they gone? Are the ads gone? Please tell me the ads are gone. We'll give it a few seconds and then we will continue with the kanji. I have returned with more piping. You don't know your sub? Thanks for the sub, man. But the kanji. Kanji are one of the main deterrents from Japanese learners from starting Japanese, because they look at kanji and they're all like, that is way too many. I agree. Now, the good news is that while there are tens of thousands of kanji in existence, technically, you only need to know only 2,136 of them. Those are called the Joyo kanji, or general use kanji. And those are the kanji selected by the Japanese government to be approved for general use. Worth noting that to complete your 12th grade or high school education throughout your entire educational life in Japan, they have to know all 2,136 or they are illiterate. And I mean, it takes them 12 years to learn all of them. So why should you rush it? You can take 12 years or more if you have to. You could go quicker if you want to. The chart that I have here is all 2,136 of those kanji, sorted from top left to bottom right in order of frequency. You'll notice that the green ones appear very frequently, the blue ones less frequently, and the purple ones are relatively rare. Just glancing at the chart, you will see that half the kanji are somewhat frequent, and a quarter of the chart, almost, are very frequent. Kanji are tricky, but they don't have to be the be-all, end-all. What really intimidates people is that they have multiple readings, nearly every single kanji. There are very few kanji that only have one reading, but most kanji have different ways of reading them. And there are two main readings. There are exceptions, of course, but in general, there's two readings. There's the onyomi, which is the Chinese reading. This is the reading when it's used in a kanji compound with other kanji. The kunyomi is the Japanese reading. This is when it's used by itself or as its own conjugated verb. There are a couple exceptions. As a whole with kanji, there are exceptions across the board. There are so many readings that are exceptional readings, one-time use readings, readings that make no freaking sense whatsoever. And the funny part is that a lot of those readings are actually used with the most frequent used kanji. And ironically enough, those readings almost come naturally with practice just because of how frequently they happen. So the reality is, the majority of these exceptions, you're gonna get used to sooner rather than later, through no fault of your own, but simply because they are so frequent that they almost come naturally based on how frequently you see them. So, that begs the question, how does one practice the kanji? That's the neat part. You don't. Let me elaborate what I mean by this. There are many ways to practice the kanji, but unfortunately, no matter how you approach it, it's gonna be a struggle. The way I approached it was with the Remembering the Kanji book, familiarizing myself with all 2,136 Joyo kanji and their English meanings and how to identify them and remember them. I then would be exposed to them as I learned grammar and learned their readings that way. There are some that try to focus on vocab, and they study the kanji using flashcards. That is cool if you efficiently learn that way. And if you enjoy that way, then that is your most efficient way of doing it. Unfortunately, I would have to disagree with learning the kanji that way. I tried doing it that way, using Isig's second book, Remembering the Kanji Volume 2, where he goes into readings. It is not nearly as effective as Volume 1, and unfortunately that book has collected a lot of dust. The reason why isolated kanji reading study isn't an efficient use of your time, as corroborated by many Japanese teaching enthusiasts and content creators, is it's a lot more effective for your brain's connections to apply what you're learning as you go. When you are simply memorizing singular or multiple readings based on kanji, then when you see them in your literature or whatever you're working on, you are working piece by piece, reconstructing the wheel, when you could already be learning whole words, and those words intermingle with each other. This is because different kanji can be interchanged with different kanji for different kanji compounds for making words. Almost like Legos, but not quite. So by familiarizing yourself with kanji, what I like to call in the field as opposed to in a book, by learning the kanji and the grammar together, it'll familiarize yourself with common words, and when you see those common words enough, your brain will see the kanji and be like, hey, I know that kanji. And when you see a word you're unfamiliar with, you'll look at the two kanji, and sometimes those two kanji will be kanji that you know, and you will take those two kanji, recall two different words that use that kanji, take those readings, put them together, and voila! A lot of the time, that's how it's done. And from that, you can actually piece together what the word even means. Not quite like Legos, there are exceptions, but very broad strokes, that exact epiphany has happened to me many times over the course of the years. But as I said earlier, there is no getting around the fact that learning the kanji is a huge mountain that every Japanese speaker has to climb. This includes Japanese speakers. They have to learn all the kanji too. They just have to do it to survive. We do it because we want to. So I cannot stress it enough. I've been saying it all stream. Be patient with yourself. Just the kanji can get very frustrating. Especially when you find yourself looking up the same word multiple times. I shit you not. For those who remember my first live streams playing Kato or Karto, the amount of times I had to look up renraku or contact. It was frustrating, honestly. But through that frustration, I made the connection. I can now recognize renraku when I'm reading other things like Spy Family, where you can imagine that's used a lot because espionage context. Good ways to learn kanji as you go is to look at stuff that interests you. Find stuff you enjoy, manga that you want to read, games that you want to play in Japanese. Like me, I'm crazy enough to try games in Japanese. They will use context-specific kanji, and those kanji will appear relatively frequently within the context of whatever you're doing, be it a game, manga, book, etc. I would recommend stuff aimed at younger audiences first, simply because those will have hiragana with the kanji. What hiragana are the hiragana kanji reading written above the kanji to give you the kanji reading and make it easier to look up in the dictionary. It saves so much time and frustration. You'll notice that almost all the games I play on stream use hiragana. Thanks, Nintendo, for being accessible. Some may ask, how come they just don't include hiragana on everything? This is because native Japanese speakers don't need hiragana. It's only for people learning the language. It is a reading aid. It is for accessibility because you are currently too skill issue to know kanji. That's literally it. So, while yeah, that sounds kind of bad, you will eventually find that even with hiragana, there will be kanji that you just know and you just read them. I've caught myself doing that quite a lot on stream. Even though there's hiragana there, I try to only read the hiragana of kanji I don't inherently know. And I'm training myself to recognize the kanji, even though there's hiragana above each kanji. CJ, a friend of mine who I've cheese collabed with, he's been to Japan several times. He passed the JLPT N2, and his criticism of hiragana used as a learning resource is that you will become too reliant on them, and that when you go to try to read anything without hiragana, you'll be back to square one. And I can understand his concerns. It's very easy to always take the easy way out and just only read the hiragana. However, again, context and repetition come into play, as well as self-discipline. If you exclusively rely on hiragana, then yes, it will become a problem. But when you're first starting out learning the language and sinking your teeth into things, hiragana are okay. But I encourage you, as well as myself, to challenge yourself. Try disabling hiragana if you can, or try reading something without hiragana. A really good example of this comes back to hentai manga. Because hentai manga are exclusively for adults, you're not gonna find any hiragana there, like ever. They're basically training wheels, yes. So while training wheels can keep the bike stable, you're not getting the bike ride experience with them. But because of how difficult kanji is, you can allow yourself to use hiragana, especially when you're starting out. It's gonna take a long time before you will get used to hiragana, or rather the lack of hiragana. And when you're reading something, and you come across a kanji that you just recognize and know the reading without the hiragana, you should congratulate yourself. That's huge. That's actually huge. Learning the kanji reading? I am still learning kanji readings. You're back. Got yourself a sandwich from Jersey Mike's. Welcome back. We're talking about kanji. Well, not for long, because we're moving on past kanji. Basically, take the kanji as they come. They're very difficult. There's no getting around that. There are many helpful resources online to help learn kanji. I don't recommend isolated flashcards for kanji. I do recommend incorporating vocab words and compound kanji, or even single kanji if it is a noun that appears frequently, in your grammar practice. Because what this does, while it incorporates kanji into your learning, it includes it in the process and makes it a lot less tedious. It makes it feel like there's one less thing to learn, because you're not actively dedicated studying kanji itself. The only kanji I know is fire, because of Pokemon. Nice, that's a good one. So earlier I touched on how the writing systems are used, and now that we have a greater understanding of what each writing system is, we can discuss how they're used to intermingle with each other. Namely, the kana and the kanji, they swap back and forth to assist sentence parsing. This is not unlike how spaces are used in English, where if it weren't for spaces, it would be very difficult to tell what word is what, where the nouns are, where the particles are, etc. When kanji and kana swap back and forth, you know that the kanji appearing, that means that you got a kanji. So you got your kanji, which is either a noun, verb, or adjective, sometimes followed by kana, which is either a particle or verb, and so on. We'll get into grammar a little bit later. We won't go deep into grammar this stream, because grammar is a very huge subject, and I'd consider that beyond the scope of a beginner level stream. Just know that the more you practice learning Japanese, the more it will feel like the three writing systems intermingle with each other, almost like a dance. And once you learn that dance, I'm not gonna say it becomes second nature, but it becomes very doable. Touching back on kanji, lower level reading material uses less kanji. And you may notice that, again, lower level reading material, or stuff based for all ages, because the common denominator is so low, they actually do use spaces between each particle. Had to say that right. Rather than having the whole thing, the whole sentence be jumbled together. Because in native Japanese text, they don't use spaces like we use spaces in English. When I say spaces, I mean the space bar on your keyboard. Spaces between words. Japanese doesn't do that. They parse their sentences using articles and the different writing systems. And it, like I said, if it sounds really weird, it technically is. From the understanding and standpoint of how their language is fundamentally different from ours. That's it. They have a different system. And this is something that has to be appreciated if you're going to be learning the language. Once you start getting into higher level material, they go really heavy on the kanji. You really got to know your kanji. There's a lot of specialized kanji that aren't part of that 2,136 amount. And it is like, bleh. They use so much kanji sometimes. Japanese newspapers are the final boss. A native Japanese newspaper, like the front page, might as well be a Chinese newspaper. I saw a screenshot of the front page of a Japanese newspaper, and I looked for any kana on it. I found 2 kana. 2. On the whole front page. And it was littered. Like, you couldn't fit more text if you tried. It was insane. If it weren't for this 2 kana, I wouldn't even know that it was a Japanese paper. I thought it was a Chinese paper. But the writing systems, they flow together. They intermingle with each other, and that will be more clear the more you delve into grammar. Speaking of grammar, the grammatical structure relies a lot on context. To the point where I like to joke that they speak in half sentences, because sometimes they do. Sometimes they only say one word. For example, the word hima means free time. So, as an English speaker, I could say the complete sentence, Anata wa hima ga arimasu ka? Are you free right now? Or rather, ima wa. I've started. In Japanese, they just walk up and say, hima? That's it. Because it's implied that you're saying free time. It's a question. And the implication is that I am asking you if you have free time. Probably right now, or other contextual clues. The most common omission is the self-pronoun. Saying, it's become a meme that foreigners are stuck in watashi wa mode. Starting every sentence with watashi wa, or me, it sounds robotic. And grammatically, it's not incorrect, but it makes you sound very robotic. A lot of Japanese text does not use it. And you will get a knack for understanding who is speaking or who the statement is being directed at, even though it is not explicitly stated, based on the context of when and how it is being said. Another thing that is particular to Japanese is that every sentence clause ends with the verb. The verb goes at the end. If there's one rule that you have to remember about Japanese language, verb goes at the end. That's it. That's the code. Verb at the end. Done. Everything else can go in whatever freaking order you want before it, so long as the verb goes at the end. You can extend on this, but that is a intermediate to advanced subject beyond the scope of this stream. I'll show an example later. Don't worry. Anybody who has delved into Japanese culture at all knows that there are different formality levels. I don't know the Japanese linguistic term for formal versus casual. I know teinego is one of the formal dialects, or polite speech. But there are different ways of saying the same exact thing, but using a polite dialect as opposed to a dictionary dialect. And this is just something you're gonna learn. Fortunately, they go hand in hand. So it's not difficult to swap back and forth between basic polite and basic dictionary terms. It is worth noting that there are some advanced polite dialects that are exclusively to like business contexts, and it's beyond the scope of what someone like us needs to know, especially for a beginner learning stream. Just know that for our purposes, there's varying levels of politeness, and when you're learning Japanese, the two levels of politeness you will be taught are dictionary form and polite form. And you don't need to learn any more than that until you start taking advanced courses. Or I would assume advanced courses, when you start getting an advanced study. For example, I know they exist, but I have not yet had to learn any of those advanced things yet. I can recognize when I see one, but I myself cannot use them. This may trigger some people on Twitter, but fortunately, I don't have a Twitter, and it's a fucking factual language. Like, I didn't make the language, so this isn't my fault. This is just me saying that there are masculine and feminine speech mannerisms. Simple as. There are words that make you sound more masculine and words that make you sound more feminine. For example, watashi wa is neutral feminine. The very keen observer of my streams may have noticed the point where I swapped from saying watashi wa to boku wa. Just saying. Once I learned that, I'm like, okay, I should try leaning into what I would say if I was gonna go to Japan. Sure, I could say watashi wa as a foreigner, but it's more accurate for someone like me to say boku wa. So, I came up with this idea to just give a couple example sentences to show just how the grammatical structure works using color codes! These sentences, I don't expect you guys to understand the grammar behind these sentences. This is just to give a visual representation of how jumbled the words can get. So in the first sentence, Tomodachi to Tokyo e resha ni notta. I rode on a train to Tokyo with a friend. So, you'll notice that the I here isn't colored. Nowhere do I say watashi wa or boku wa in the sentence. I could start the sentence with watashi wa tomodachi to Tokyo e resha ni notta, and that would have the I included at the start. But that is not necessary, and a lot of the time, you're not gonna see that, you're not gonna hear that. It's implied, and you will eventually get used to it. Even someone like me, who was like, I was very anal about including it, made the realization, oh, okay, it's a copium. It's fine. The next sentence is kind of funny, because I realized later how this sentence could be structured differently, and I will explain that after I'm done explaining what I have written. Tanaka-san wa toshokan de shizuka ni yonde imasu. Mr. Tanaka is quietly reading in the library. In this sentence, there's a lot going on, and you may notice that the adverb and verb have different conjugation colors based on how they're being used. This is intermediate, but I wanted to showcase it here to show that the way you use particles and conjugation can affect what the verb or adjective, how it's used in the sentence. I also want to point out, in each of these sentences, notice how the verb comes at the end. I rode on a train to Tokyo with a friend. Rode being the verb, but notice how the verb notta is at the end. Reading is the verb in this sentence. He's reading. But yondeimasu is the last word in the sentence. The verb comes at the end. Everything else can actually be swapped around so long as the particles are in the right place. I could actually make this sentence verbatim in English say what is written here. Tanaka-san wa toshokan de shizuka ni yondeimasu. Mr. Tanaka-san is in the library quietly reading. It can be done. It sounds a little funny, but it's uncommon for it to work that way. Most of the time, the grammar is going to be jumbled like it is in the first example. But this is how the Japanese grammatical structure goes to English. So now, it's time to actually start. We are an hour and a half into the stream. It is now time to start learning Japanese for real. This is what you guys paid for. Literally, because this is a Subathon reward. So if you contributed to the Subathon and you are not here, I hope you're watching the VOD. And if you somehow, for some reason, are not watching this, then I thank you for your charitable donation. So the first word we are learning is death. This is like beating a game and then being told you beat the tutorial! It really do be like that! Yes! Japanese is difficult. I think so. So, death. You hear it a lot. And I do mean a lot. In fact, a lot of weebs meme about death. But today, if there's anything you want to learn today, it's what death actually means and how it's used. For example, death, pronounce it death. I know it says desu, but this is one of the examples of a kana being pronounced differently. There are some examples of it. This is one of them. For the most part, there are very, very, very few exceptions to pronunciation. If you say desu, it's not wrong-ish. You just sound very foreign and robotic. Desu wa. I will not be covering wa like you've written in this stream. That is actually a feminine dialect that you have given. A pompous feminine dialect. But don't worry about it. That is a not too intermediate thing, but it's not something I'll be covering. So des is actually a verb. It means it's or to be. It denotes something's existence. Literally the phrase I think therefore I am actually does not use des. Never mind. Strike that from the record. That uses something else. Examples! Genki, meaning I'm lively or well. Yes. Genki, yes. You could just say Genki by itself and omit the des, because it can be implied that Genki. Yeah, I'm good. The difference between Genki des and Genki is the difference between saying, yeah, I'm fine, versus, yeah, I'm good. So that's an example, another example of how the pronoun is omitted. Boku wa genki desu. Watashi wa genki desu. Notice how each time, you don't need that me pronoun. You don't need it in front. You can say genki desu. I am fine. I am in a state of fine. Genki. I am lively. I am well. I'm fine. True Japanese would just reply with a noise. Actually, it's technically not a noise. I'm gonna type it in chat. They either type un for yes or un for no. That is actually the more colloquial way of saying yes or no, as opposed to the dictionary hai and ie. You almost never use ie, actually. Yeah, is even more colloquial. But yes. Another example, you could use it with nouns. Kohi desu. It's coffee. Ryokai desu. To understand, comprehension, understanding. Understood, but it's saying it politely. Ryokai desu. You sometimes hear this when a commander is speaking to his subordinates, and his subordinates say, Ryokai desu. Understood. Gotcha. Etc. You could say ryokai. That sounds a bit more casual. The desu adds a bit of formality to it. Desu, in and of itself, is a formal expression. I will not be covering how you say it informally, because that goes a little bit beyond the scope of what I'm teaching in this stream today. So this is the first exposure to what Japanese is like. Des. It can be a bit tricky to wrap your hand about what exactly des is, pun intended. But the more practice you get with it, the more exposure you get, the more practice, the more naturally it will come. And after des comes particles. I'm sure many Japanese learners or people who have heard about Japanese learning, it's all about the particles, baby! Go particles! Yeah, particles! Get those particles! Everything's a particle except the particles are just a tool. The particles, if I go back to this slide here, to, e, ni, wa, de, and ni, those are particles. Well, in this case, ni technically wouldn't be a particle, it'd be an adverb particle, but all particles do is they provide context to what the word is doing in the sentence. However, the particle itself is meaningless. Like in English, we have words like a, at, the, stuff like that. Those are particles. It's a party, please. Particles, nice. Okay. So, particles are used everywhere, and fortunately, in entry-level Japanese texts, the spaces come after every particle, so you will know when you have something with a particle in it. When you are reading Japanese text without spaces, the particles can take a little bit of getting used to at first, but once you learn the particles and contextually understand what you're reading, it really helps when you're using classroom setting sentences. But when you really understand the context of what you're reading, the particles just fill into place naturally. So, another thing about particles, sometimes the particle can be omitted if it can be implied with context. I found this to be the case a lot when it comes to stuff regarding time, like scheduling or at 5 o'clock or whenever. I use particles with time, but sometimes I don't. For example, when I'm making my schedule post, instead of saying konshu no yote, I just say konshu yote. What that translates to, konshu no yote, the schedule of this week, versus konshu yote, this week's schedule. You can imply the particle there. So, I touched upon it earlier, we're touching it now. The topic particle wa. When you say watashi wa, you're using this wa particle. So, if you wanna, we could use, hey, I even give an example, right? I'm forgetting what I freaking put in my own PowerPoint. Very cool. The wa particle, pronounced wa, it's written as ha, but it's pronounced wa. And every time I romanize something, I write ha like this, respecting that is the direct romanization. This helps disambiguate it from the from the wa kana. So when you see the romanization here, just know that when it is used as a particle, which it very frequently is, it is pronounced wa. And what this particle does is it introduces a new topic for the conversation. So, kore wa kohi desu. So, kore meaning this, kore wa. This being the subject of the conversation, kohi desu. Kohi meaning coffee, and desu meaning is. So, the topic of this conversation, this is coffee. It's backwards, I know. The Japanese language works like that. So, one more time. Kore meaning this, kore wa. The topic for this conversation is kore, this. Kohi desu is coffee. Coffee exists. Coffee exists as the topic of this conversation, as this item. As opposed to sore, meaning that. Sore wa not kore, sore, that, ocha desu, is coffee. Coffee is this, Yoda. You bring up a good point, actually. A lot of people use Yoda speak as a way to get over how backwards Japanese is, and it actually works very well. If we try it with this example, this coffee is. That's how Yoda would say it. This coffee is. Versus this is coffee, right? But Yoda would say this coffee is. That tea is. Notice how it's almost one-to-one every single time. Thanks, Yoda. Very cool. If it feels hard to understand at first, that's because it is. And you are justified. If you're feeling confused, your confusion is very justified. It's very backwards compared to English, and it takes practice. If you're understanding this, then you're ahead of the game. Congratulations, you are right alongside on the beginner ride. Let's go. One thing I like to point out, ocha here, this is tea. Ocha, tea. Notice how I have cha at the top. This is the furigana for the kanji for tea, or cha. That's how furigana works. The next particle I'm covering is the inclusive topic particle, mo. So, mo is used like wa, but instead of wa denoting the new topic for conversation, mo means also or as well. It includes it as the subject, as it includes it as well. Pun intended. For example, I did not put furigana in this slide. Whoops. Fortunately, I have the readings below. So, kyou wa, so kyou, today, kyou wa isogashi. So, in regards to today, I'm busy. Notice how there is no I, there's no watashi, there's no boku. It is implying because I'm speaking, kyou wa isogashi. Watashi wa kyou wa isogashi. Same sentence. Whenever that happens, I put the omitted word in parentheses because without it, in English, it would look like an incomplete sentence, which it technically is. But in Japanese, they can imply it from context. I did not continue putting parentheses around this. You can tell how my commitment to quality. I even proofread this. Damn. But ashita mo isogashi. So, kyou wa isogashi. I'm busy today. Kyou mo isogashi. I'm busy tomorrow too. The mo is where the to comes from. So, isogashi meaning busy. Ashita meaning tomorrow. Kyou mo isogashi. And if that sounds familiar, kyou mo kawaii, I'm sure you can put the dots together. Asatte mo. So asate meaning the day after tomorrow. Asate mo. This is an example of more omitted language. I am busy the day after tomorrow as well. So altogether, we have an example of wa being used. In fact, in this particular instance, wa doesn't even need to be used. You can say kyou isogashi. But for these following sentences, the mo would also need to be used. Otherwise, it sounds like you are repeating yourself quite a lot. So, kyou isogashi. Kyou wa isogashi. Ashita mo. Also tomorrow. I'm busy. Asatte mo. Also the day after tomorrow. So, mo includes more to the subject already being presented. And now we move on to adjectives. That's all the particles we're going to cover for now. We're going to move on to adjectives. Whoops. I pressed the wrong button. Give me a moment. I broke something. All right, we're back. Okay, so adjectives. There are two types of adjectives, E adjectives and Na adjectives. If you ever forget that, I have a helpful visual right here. If you don't know who this is, how are you watching VTubers? If I'm the only VTuber you watch, then I'm sorry, but thanks. But for those who unironically don't know, this is Ninomiya Inanis from Hololive English. Her name is Ina for short. Is that crony? Yes, it is! So, Ina. That's why we have Ina here. Fortunately, E adjectives always end in E. Who would have thought? I've seen her, but that's pretty much all I know. She's actually my favorite Holo EN one. That was on the test last year, I think. And if it wasn't, well, it won't be on the test this year. So most adjectives that do not end in E are not adjectives, which is pretty neat. It's either E or not E, meaning na, except for a couple exceptions, which are, you gotta learn as you go. Is that Mari underscore EN? Yes, it is! So adjectives are used in English as they are in Japanese. You simply slap the adjective onto whatever you're adjectiving. And I will explain some examples in the next slide. For a na adjective, you slap a na after the adjective, and then you say the word. We'll see some examples in the next slide. But before we move into the next slide, there are some examples of na adjectives that end in E. For example, kirei. That means pretty or clean. Kirai. Distasteful or hated. This is very read. I caught myself using this once to a Japanese speaker, and I apologized. I don't see this used very often. In English, we say, oh, I hate this, I hate that. We say it all the freaking time. In Japanese, you don't do that. It's a cultural thing. Saiwai, I hate this reading, but it is an adjective that ends in E, that is a na adjective, means fortunate or lucky. It uses the kanji for happiness, which is shiawase, and that's why it trips me up. But those are some examples of E adjectives that end in na. They follow this na rule, which we're gonna see now. So some examples of E adjectives and na adjectives. We'll start with the E adjectives over here. We got E, literally E. That means good. I'm sure you've heard E a lot. Like, sonna koto ii, or something like that. Isugashi. Hey, we've used this one before. I'm sure you can figure out what it means. It's also an adjective. Tanoshi. I wrote the wrong thing here. That goes here. It's fine. You can see the cracks are showing in my quality control putting this together. It's fine, don't worry about it. Tanoshi means fun. I'm sure you've heard that one too. Along with atsui, hot, like warm, temperature hot. Samui, cold. And atarashi, meaning new. Na adjectives are like suki, meaning likable. You ever heard something like daisuki? Well, you could start the sentence instead of ending it with suki. Like, sukina, daisukina. An example would be pizza ga daisuki, meaning I love pizza. Or daisuki na pizza, or pizza that I really like. That's an example of how you could use suki as an adjective. Genki, remember this one? It was in an earlier slide. Shizuka means quiet, and aratana means new. Notice how atarashi and aratana both use the same kanji, but they have a different reading, or rather a different form of reading after the a. So a different kanji reading, but the same kanji, but it still has a similar meaning. I don't know the nuance of when you would use atarashi versus aratana, but this is a good example of a similar kanji, or the same kanji, having different readings but meaning something similar, because each kanji means something. And the Remembering the Kanji book, Volume 1 by James W. Heisig, goes into all of the kanji English meanings. And I find it very helpful. To give some examples of how these adjectives are used. Atsui ocha. We learned ocha as tea. Atsui meaning hot. It's like you'd say it in English. Atsui ocha. Hot tea. It's the same. Samui kohi. Samui meaning cold. Kohi, coffee. Cold coffee. Samui kohi. Here's an example of a na adjective. We got shizuka. Shizuka na hito. Hito meaning person. This is probably one of the easiest kanjis you'll ever know. So if there's any kanji you want to know, it's this one. Shizuka na hito. Quiet person. You put the na after the adjective because it's a na adjective. And that's how na adjectives work. But what if you want to use nouns as adjectives? We got a particle for that. Or do we? No is the particle. The no particle. This is literally the kana no. And this is actually one of the first kana that a lot of people learn because it's so recognizable. The no particle takes the preceding noun to describe the following noun. And going back to Yoda speak, no can be translated as the word of and read in reverse, but I don't have an example of that written, so I'm gonna try to come up with one right now. If I say something like, oh, here's one. Watashi no ocarina. My ocarina. Or ocarina of mine. Jika no ocarina. Literally, ocarina of time. That is the title of the game. Let's go. You now know Zelda no Densetsu, Jika no Ocarina. The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. You can actually use that as your example when remembering the no particle and how it's used. While yes, you could say it is time's ocarina, like the ocarina belongs to time, in this context, it's the ocarina of time, which is how it's of read in reverse. Nesu desu sounds cute. Thanks, that's actually something I came up with as my greeting when I first started streaming. I don't really say it much anymore. Konbanwa boku wa nesu desu. I say that whenever I get rated by a Japanese streamer, which has happened 3 times. Watashi no namae wa nesu desu. So here's the example of the no particle belonging something like mine. The name of mine. My name. The name of mine. Is Ness. And you'll notice that when I say is, I'm pointing to des and not wa. A big misconception that a lot of beginner Japanese speakers make is that they confuse the wa particle for the verb is, as opposed to the particle is. That's why I avoid using wa as is, but rather des as is, because the des is what's doing the heavy lifting. Going back to the wa particle really quick, because there's a bit to unpack with this example. Watashi no namae wa. We see the wa, right? Actually, let's take a step back. Watashi no. When we see the no, that means that the particle no combines whatever comes before it and whatever comes after it as its own package. So, watashi no namae. We got a package here, right? And the package goes with wa. So this package, because the wa particle, means the subject or topic of this sentence is this package. Watashi no namae. The name of mine is the subject of the sentence. That's what we're talking about. Followed by nesu desu. And if we just look at nesu desu, this literally directly one-to-one translates to as is ness. Because des means it's, or it exists, state of being. It is a state of being, state of being, it is ness. Therefore, watashi no namae, the name of mine, is Ness. Or rather, My name is Ness. Noket, this name of mine is Nessu. That is also a correct way of saying it, yes. The next example can get a little tricky, so let's unpack it. Ocha wa tsukue no ue desu. So, ocha wa. By the way, the translation is, the tea is above the desk. Ocha wa. So we already know the subject of this sentence is the tea. What comes next is tsukue, meaning desk. However, tsukue comes with a no. Tsukue no ue. Ue means up or above, meaning this above is being used to describe this desk. Therefore, something above desk. Above of desk doesn't really translate very well, but an epiphany I had when learning Japanese grammar, you're not trying to translate to English. What I recommend trying to do is comprehending each piece and seeing how it plays with the other pieces to form a comprehensible sentence. Tsukue no ue. We have desk, we have the noun property particle, and ue, above or up, meaning this above is an applied detail to describe something about the desk, followed by des to close it off with the is. So we know that whatever's being talked about has to do with something above the desk. Well, what are we talking about? Well, let's look at the subject of the sentence. The subject of the sentence is ocha, tea. So the subject of the sentence is what this all pertains to. So, what is above the desk? Tea. Tea is above the desk, or on top of the desk. A pun that I like to say, this is a little advanced, so bear with me. Aru mikan no ue ni aru mikan. The orange on top of the aluminum can. That is how I internalize a lot of things, actually. One of them being how the noun properties of a direction to a physical object are used. Ue no tsukue would be incorrect. The order of the nouns does matter in this case. And while it can be a bit hard to explain at first, with enough exposure and practice, you will get a feel for how it works. So if it's confusing at first, you are justified in being confused. It is confusing at first. I am once again restating that the Japanese language is fundamentally different from English. It's going to be confusing at first, and this seems like a lot, which is why I'm trying to go as slow and as clear as I can. If you have any questions, please post them in chat. Seizure warning. Okay, now I know what does that. Very cool. My bad. The next example is Atarashi no wa tanoshi. So you may see that we have an adjective followed immediately by the no particle. This is because the no particle can be used to substitute a noun entirely if it could be inferred from some other outside context. But because we don't have an outside context in this case, it just takes a general noun. And in English, we could use general nouns like thing, or it, or one. In English, we actually say this a lot when we are referring to a noun or something that we don't want to repeat repeatedly. And how we do that in English is by saying it. For example, here's an example of why using no like this would be important in Japanese, spoken in English. I ate a hamburger. The hamburger was delicious. The hamburger cost me $5. The hamburger spilled on the floor and stained my shoe. Versus, I ate a burger. It was delicious, but it cost me $5, and it fell on the floor and stained my shoe. Notice how I only said hamburger once in that string of sentences. The no particle can be used the same way. Atarashi no wa tanoshi. The new one is fun. Let's break it down. Atarashi meaning new. No, the particle, the noun property particle. Wa, the subject particle. Tanoshi, the adjective for fun. So this sentence is a little different than what we're used to because there's no inherent verb. What I forgot to mention earlier is that ending a sentence with an E adjective does not end in des. You would omit the des in all cases. It is actually grammatically incorrect to have des at the end. I think. You could fact check on me on that one actually. But in this case, here we go. Atarashi new no. So new something. Okay. We have the no particle. Let's see what comes after. Oh. What comes after is another particle. What that means is that this no is being used to refer to something that would have been between here, but we're leaving out. So, if I said, Atarashi no kuruma wa tanoshi, kuruma meaning car, the new car is fun. But in this case, the word is gone. So we know that this is referring to something, but we don't know what it is. So we'll use a placeholder noun instead. So we know that we're talking about a new something. Let's put that in the back burner. Wa is the subject particle. So we know the topic of this sentence is whatever this new thing is. What does it apply to? It applies to the rest of the sentence, which is tanoshi, being used to describe whatever it is. So the subject of the sentence must be fun. Atarashi no wa tanoshi. This new thing must be fun. This new one is fun. I really hope I'm breaking this down sufficiently. I don't know how. I've never taught Japanese before. So the most I've done is made some fun flashcards. We're coming up on our next Bezos break. Let me quickly check how much of the slideshow I have left, and I'll get back to you really quick. Give me a second, please. Okay. So, what we're gonna do, we're not gonna take a full 3-minute Bezos break. Instead, what we're gonna do, we only got a couple more slides. I'm gonna take a very quick 1-minute break. We're gonna take a really quick break just to clear the ads. And then we'll be on our way, alright? Actually, 1.5 minutes. Yeah, 1.5 minutes. Really quick break. Sit tight, drink some water, actually. Spend this 1.5 minutes to grab some water and drink it. I'll do it too. I'm not kidding, get some water. You got your water yet? It's okay, take your time. Man, my water's in the bedroom. Get up and get it. You have time. Does it really take up 90 seconds to get up and go to your bedroom and come back? Is your house that big? Please. I believe in you. You can do it. You can get your water. It doesn't matter if you hardly know her. It's fine. You got this. We got about 1 minute left. Water is good for you. Unless you're a fire. In which case, don't. But if you're a fire, maybe you shouldn't be watching Twitch. Maybe you should be cooking or something. I don't know. I don't get to choose how you live your life, though. Live your best life. If you want to be a fire watching Twitch, be my guest. we're almost done with the ad break. If you don't like these ad breaks, you could thank Jeff Bezos for that, who owns Amazon, who owns Twitch. Their rules, not mine. But fortunately, the ad break's ending very soon. Alright. Hope y'all got your water. Good stuff. You know what? I'm gonna grab my... Where's my water here? Grab my water. Very cool. Now I've got water. There's ads right now? You subbed, man. Thanks for the sub. So we're approaching the end of the PowerPoint. Don't worry. Thanks for sticking with me this whole time. Hey, you're back. You came back just in time. I hope your water is good. Okay. Up next, we learn des. Des is. But what if it isn't? This is when we go into negative forms of things. So, when you want to say something isn't, you would use the negative form of des. I was very confused when I looked over while you were talking and saw BRB. That was a little bit segment that I decided to do. Don't worry about it. Enjoy your sub-only content. I don't do it often. In fact, I almost never do it. And if I do it, it'll just be something silly like that. That's inconsequential. I don't like paywalling things. So, the negative form of des is read as janai for most cases. I'm sure you've heard janai said a lot. This is also a very gross simplification of the language, by the way. Broad strokes, this is how you say the negative form of des. There are other ways of saying it that are more applicable, and this is not a blanket case, but for the sake of beginner language learning, this is acceptable. So earlier in the stream, we said genki desu, meaning we're good, we're happy, we're healthy. However, what if we weren't? We'd say genki janai. We are not well. We are not doing good. We're not lively. Things are turbulent. It's not good. Genki janai. Earlier, in our example sentence, we had ocha desu. It's tea. But what if it wasn't? Then it would not be tea. Ocha janai. It is not tea. That is only applicable for nouns and not adjectives. For adjectives, it's a bit different. And this grammar will extend to other things beyond the scope of this stream. So keep this in the back of your mind the more you go down, because it will appear again. But for the purposes of this stream, this is all you gotta know. For adjectives, replace the last e with kunai. So we know isogashi means busy. However, if we take the last e in isogashi and replace it with kunai, it becomes isogashi kunai, meaning not busy. If isogashi is busy, the negative form, isogashi kunai, means not busy. Because you're not busy, it's the negative form. Tanoshi, fun. Tanoshi kunai, not fun. You take the last e and you replace it with kunai. Because this grammar pattern happens a lot, if you don't understand it now, you will have plenty of opportunities to wrap your head around it in further grammar study. So while it may seem like another thing to memorize, it kind of is, but it has a lot of uses. This is just one of them. Tadanu, please, I'm simplifying things. The ga particle! The infamous ga particle! There is no way for English speakers to differentiate between wa and ga. The ga particle is impossible. Don't fucking worry about it. Just pretend it doesn't exist. Is what I would say if I wasn't doing my job right. So, I am going to attempt to explain the ga particle the best I can. The ga particle is used to identify a singular thing out of all the possibilities of that thing. It can also be used to identify something that you don't know, so you're asking a question about. The problem that English speakers run into with the ga particle is that it shares a direct English translation with the wa particle, and that it kind of doesn't. Unfortunately, this ambiguity makes it very difficult for native English speakers to wrap their head around the wa and ga particles. So rather than think of it as a translation, I encourage you to consider the particle use as what is your intent of information conveyance in the sentence that you're constructing. In other words, what are you trying to say? If I was trying... Let's look at two very similar sentences using myself as an example. Nesu-san wa isogashi. Isogashi meaning busy, right? Nesu-san wa. I am busy. Nes is busy. I'll speak in third person for the sake of translation. Nesu-san wa isogashi. Nes is busy. Regarding Nes, using the wa particle, in regards to the subject particle Nes, he's busy. Just in general, he's a busy person. He's got a full-time job. He streams a lot. He has to take his cat out an hour a day now because they're doing construction. He does race commentaries every Saturday like I did this morning. Ness is busy. That is what the wa particle is like in this context. Now let's change one little thing. Nesu-san ga isogashi. The ga particle. Notice how the only difference between these two sentences is the particle used. Nesu-san wa isogashi. Nesu-san ga isogashi. If you threw each of these in a translator, it would just pop out, Ness is busy. However, what this sentence actually means is, Ness is the only one who is busy, as opposed to anyone else. I'm the busy one. In a world full of people who are not busy, it is me who is busy. Another good example is All Might from Boku no Hero Academia, or My Hero Academia. All Might, his catchphrase, Watashi ga kita, as opposed to Watashi wa kita. Let's break that down. So Watashi means me or I, in a general sense. Wa or ga, that's the particle. And kita, meaning has arrived in this context. So that is the past tense verb for to come, meaning I have arrived, or I came. Watashi wa kita means I'm here, I've arrived. But the way All Might says it, Watashi ga kita, puts a heavy emphasis on himself. It is All Might who has arrived. And this is further emphasized by the preceding comments to that statement. Everything's all right. Why? Because I am here. Everything's all right. Because it is me who has arrived. As opposed to anyone else. Everything's okay because it is me. I am the one who has arrived. That is why it's okay. That is the use of the ga particle in a familiar anime context. If All Might had said, Watashi wa kita, he said, it's okay, I'm here. But that would be severely underplaying his abilities as an almighty superhero. And it wouldn't really be giving him any credibility. It's the equivalent of, like, Joe Schmo arriving on scene and saying, oh yeah, it's okay, I'm here. Like, no, screw you, Joe Schmo. I want a fucking superhero. Watashi ga kita. Everything's okay because I am the one who is here. Because it is me who has arrived out of any other superhero. It is me who's here, therefore it's okay. Watashi ga kita. Thanks, My Hero Academia. So, that is about as good of an example as I can give as to the differentiation between how wa and ga are used. I I can guarantee you're still gonna mix them up, no matter what. Native English speakers are doomed to mix them up. And if you can overcome that doom, please document how you did it so we could learn from your power. Please. Please. But that's all, folks. That is all I wanted to cover for today. I had originally planned for this PowerPoint to be literally twice as long. I was going to go into verbs, verb conjugation, verb particles, constructing sentences with verbs, and I realized, wait a minute. That's way too long. And that's not exactly beginner friendly. What I wanted to do today is give you all an introduction to what learning Japanese is like. Set the stage. Dip your toes in the water. Maybe learn a new thing or two. A bit of trivia. See what goes into learning Japanese. Just a surface level exposure. That's all I wanted to do today. For beginners. I wanted to orient this stream specifically for beginners. Considering learning the language, or at the very least struggling and wanting some next steps. And in summary, what I got for you, first and foremost, the mental aspect is going to dictate how your success pans out. Slow and steady wins the race. Go at a pace that works for you. Be patient with yourself. It's not a race. It really is not a race. Slow and steady wins, because it's not a race. I've been off and on for 5 years, and I'm only recently forcing myself back into things by streaming games in Japanese. Do what you like. Do what makes you happy. Do what you want to do. Do what works for you. And it's not to you too. But yes, learning a language is not for everyone. It's not for the faint of heart. And I bonk May? I mean, maybe. He's just reading what's on the slide. But yeah, when you're learning Japanese, go at a pace that you're comfortable with. Even if it feels like the pace is too slow. What the fuck? Bonk it at him, not me. Even if the pace feels like it's too slow for you, so, are you comfortable with it? It doesn't matter if it's too slow or too fast for someone else. Go with what you like. Go with what makes you happy. You will be making progress at your pace, and you should be satisfied when you do make progress. Embrace the little victories. Trust me. Those little victories are actually far bigger victories than you may realize. And it took several people pointing that out to me before I could realize that myself. When you're learning Japanese, the kana's important. I strongly encourage against glossing over kana and using romaji to teach yourself everything at once. Do not use romaji to try to teach yourself everything at once. Take it step by step at a time. Learn the kana, get comfortable and familiar with the kana. When you are comfortable and familiar with the kana, then go into simple grammar, and you can incorporate kanji into those grammar exercises. Again, the Taya Kim's Guide to Japanese, if you just look it up on Google, it's a free online resource. That is how I learned pretty much all of my Japanese after learning the kana and the kanji from the book. But you don't need to learn the kanji from the book to participate in the guide, because he lays out the kanji for you and incorporates it, and it snowballs. He sticks to very commonly used words. It is one of the most beginner-friendly guides on the internet. In fact, when you do use that guide, you will find that most of my PowerPoint is based on that guide. As well as my own experiences. So, if a lot of things in that guide seem familiar because I mentioned them, that's because they are. And that's also how the language works. It's like eating a burger at a different restaurant, and it's like, this burger tastes like a burger. Well, no shit, because it's a burger. learning Japanese is a journey. It really is. So, take it how you like it, honestly. If you can enjoy the journey, then you will never fail yourself or some shit like that. I'm not a motivational speaker, damn it. I'm trying to discourage bad habits. I've seen a lot of people get swept away by toxic influencer culture is what I refer to it as. The whole Sigma grind set. You gotta grind every day. Don't grind every day. You don't grind every day. Make steady, consistent progress every day. And if there's a day where it just doesn't feel like you can do that, make just a little bit of progress. Just a little bit of progress. Any forward motion is still forward motion. So long as it is greater than 0, you have won. That's a win. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And that's me now being influencer culture. I'm just as bad. Shit, I've lost all my credibility. No! If there's anything you could take from this stream, though, you now know what des means. So any weebs saying des or whatever, you could say, hey, I actually know what that means. So I hope this was a good introduction to what learning Japanese is like. I want to be clear that what I did today is a very, very, very bare bones introduction. I only glossed over the surface tip of the iceberg. We only went over what the writing systems are, very basic sentences using des, and adjectives, and a couple particles. That's fine. I had kind of wanted to branch out into more particles and verbs and conjugations, but that's too much. I don't want to overload you guys with information. Learning too much at once can have the opposite effect, where it becomes too much to carry. It's the mental equivalent of taking all the shopping bags in one trip, when the shopping bags are literally filling the entire car. Just take multiple trips. You're gonna drop bags if you take the whole car's worth of shopping bags. Maybe that's not a great analogy because I'm really good at using minimal shopping bags. What I'm trying to say, don't overload yourself. Take it easy. One step at a time, and it'll snowball. It's gonna snowball. Everything you've learned one step at a time, it's gonna come back. And eventually, it's gonna snowball into more and more stuff, and before you realize it, sometimes the snowball gets too big and something slips, but it's fine because you can keep going and you can just include that again. Overall, it's up to you how you want to progress in the journey. But that is all I had for today. Overloading people is what I do. Tadadu, please. In any case, thank you for coming to my not TED Talk. This stream was brought by viewers like you, because you guys literally funded this by doing the Subathon reward. I would like to once again thank you all for your patience in my scheduling mishaps. If it weren't for the schedule delay today, my ability to present the information today would be hampered greatly, because when I got home, not only did I have to take the cat out, but I was dead exhausted and worn out, and I have the energy to do this. So I was able to do this, and I'm glad I did. So thank you for your patience. Thanks for sticking with me, even though the schedules got all wacky. If you missed it because the schedule, I humbly apologize, but this VOD will be up, and you are free to ask me any Japanese questions that you have in the Discord, or anytime, really. I'm happy to help. If you have any resources that you have questions about, if you're iffy on something, I'd love to help out. Until then, thanks for coming. The next Subathon reward is God's Drunkest Driver. Oh, that's gonna be fun. I'm gonna have to set that up and make sure my computer can handle it. If my computer can't handle streaming Assetto Corsa, which it should, but if it can't, I'll probably do an easier game like Euro Truck Simulator. Oh dear. In any case, that's all I had for today. Who can I raid? What have I got? Let's see. Who's online? Who's gonna be a Japanese learning raid? Who would be good for this? Why don't we go ahead and... You know what? Perfect. We're gonna raid into Harutomo. He is a speedrunner. He speedruns Katamari Damashi a lot. He is very multilingual friendly in that he has a translation bot just like mine, and an on-screen translation that does more than mine. So why don't we go ahead and say hi to Harutomo, and you could maybe glean some more Japanese knowledge from him. What about Mochi? Mochi-shi? What's Mochi doing? Let me check her. Probably doing art. I'm not really... I lurk in their streams. I don't think... Yeah, Mochi-shi doesn't have English translation support in her stream, unfortunately. She's an artist, but unfortunately she doesn't really... She has it on screen, but not in the chat. Arya Raid Shadow Legends, yeah. So Harutomo, very chill. And I'm sure you guys will just like him. I would say, as a compliment, it's a compliment when I say third monitor content. In that, you just put him on, you listen to him, he's very chill, calming voice. He likes his bilingual audience and appeals to them, as you're about to see. In any case, I'll get the schedule up tomorrow, probably. I work tomorrow, but that's neither here nor there. Take care of yourselves, I hope you learned something, and I'll catch you next time.